I'm not here for work today. I'm here as Rick Felder, and I'm here to talk about my journey living with HIV for the last 34 years. I'm just an ordinary guy. As a matter of fact, she mentioned I'm an Eagle Scout. The last time I was at this church was about 40 years ago next month, and I was looking for what I was going to wear this morning, and this belt I probably wore when I was here last. It's on the last hole now, but but I can still get it around me, and I'm afraid if I unloosen it, it's not going to go back. It's not going to meet again. But it's good to be back here in Florence, and I've known Carl for a long time. I grew up with Sherry, and so I have a really strong connection here. It is good to be back here. But I'm just a pretty ordinary person. But I want to talk about several different things today, and the first thing is to recognize this is World AIDS Day. This is the 30th National World AIDS Day. And I can remember 30 years ago, I went to the very first World AIDS Day program in Columbia, and with my partner at the time, Terry, at our church. And sadly, that was the only World AIDS Day program that he would attend, because he passed away from AIDS-related complications about 18 months later. The programs then were more remembrance and less celebration. We prayed for peace, strength, and understanding. We reached out to support those we loved, and we hoped for better treatment for people living with HIV. And today, I'd like to pause for just a minute and remember those who are not with us. And remember those much harder times. And I'm going to share a little bit about that. But just take a second to remember someone, if you knew someone who's not here with us now. And I'd also like to celebrate those of us who are still in the fight. And I love seeing the children running around with these red streamers, and because that is where we are today. To celebrate those in the fight and our allies that are still fighting with us. Because we are survivors. We're HIV survivors. We're not HIV victims. And we're in a great place right now. And so I was diagnosed with HIV 34 years ago, and I never had a negative test. My first test was positive. I had just graduated from Clemson a couple of years before. So I can't tell you how long I've been living with HIV, because I don't have that benchmark of having a negative test and a positive test. But as we look at World AIDS Day today, and we're about to embark on AIDS Walk here in Charlotte, where am I? In Florence. I was in Charlotte Thursday. In Florence, and Johnny mentioned the theme for today's program of hope, peace, love, and hope. I'd like for us to think about those as gifts we can give ourselves and give to others around us. We talk about peace a lot this time of year. Peace on earth, God's peace, the peace movement, and peace in our streets, peace in our country, peace in the world. But what does peace actually mean to you? For me, I think of inner peace and tranquility. It hasn't always been this way, but I can be alone with my thoughts now and really enjoy the company I'm keeping. There was a time where I didn't like to be alone. I didn't like the quiet, and I had to have some sound going on, or my hands doing something, moving something. But, and they're often, my partner David's with me here today, and sometimes we have disagreements, and it's funny because we'll be going back and forth, and he'll just stop. And I said, okay, so you're giving in, right? He said, no. I can be right, or I can be peaceful. And I'm choosing to be peaceful right now. So, the peace comes in all kind of different ways. But, that inner peace doesn't always come without a struggle. And certainly, arriving at inner peace with an HIV diagnosis hasn't always come easy. There are a lot of questions, like what's going to happen to me? Will I get sick? What are my friends and family going to say? Can I continue to work to support myself? Or maybe, why did I agree to stand up here and share my HIV status with 300 or 400 people? Or the nearly 10,000 people who've seen that video that HopeHealth posted. I think the last time I looked at it, 9,300 people. So if we all go on, if you're on Facebook, go on there, look at it, share it again so we can get 10,000 views of that video. Because the more we talk about this, the more we spread the word, the better the world is going to be in HIV. But inner peace for me comes with being able to be truthful and honest, to let others know about my HIV status, and to let others living with HIV know that they're going to be okay. That while for a moment, HIV diagnosis can be all-consuming. It's crushing, and at very least, it's very humbling. But it's also not the very worst. It's not the worst thing that ever happened to me. And where I am now is I see my doctor twice a year. I take my medicine every day, twice a day. I take my medicine once a day, like it's prescribed, and I move on with my day. Except for the fact that I work in HIV and I work with HIV agencies every day, the topic of my own HIV comes up very little. My partner David he's an HIV advocate, and he's traveled all over the country working with different committees and ADAP committees, and he's on he's the chair of the planning council. And sometimes we get caught up in work, and I told him, I said, okay, from now on, this a couple of years ago, I said, from now on, we don't talk about HIV after 7 o'clock at night, unless it's mine or yours, because it can be all-consuming that way, and this is what I do for a living. I talk about it every day. I work with groups like HopeHealth. I work with patient organizations. But, I can think back to the mid-'80s. I think it's probably about 1982. I was a sophomore at Clemson. Go Tigers. And I heard about this mysterious infection that was impacting the gay community. It was in Los Angeles. It was in San Francisco. It was in New York. And I thought to myself, I remember thinking then, I said, you know what? That's never going to get to South Carolina. And the advances we're making, I have all the faith in science. The advances we're making, even if it spreads a little more, we're going to have a cure for it very, very soon. Little did I know 30 plus years later that the cure would still be elusive, and more than 35 million people worldwide would have died from complications of HIV. So that gift of peace that I give myself and I offer to you is the knowledge that I know that I'm an HIV survivor and I'm not an HIV victim. So we can also give ourselves the gift of love. And I believe that first we've got to love ourselves. When we can shed shame, and that's not necessarily the shame of HIV or being gay or whatever, we all live with shame around us. But we've got to shed shame and really, truly love ourselves and take care of ourselves. Then we are open to love others and allow other people to love us. We allow that vulnerability to serve us as a strength and not a weakness. I sold my family really short several years ago. It was 10 years into this before I talked to them about my HIV. And what made me talk about it was I'd been told by my medical team that I probably had, this was about 93, 94, that I probably had 5 good years left, that I should get my affairs in order and spend my remaining time taking care of myself. And I was scared to death. I had to tell my mom and daddy. And I grew up just about 45 minutes down 95 in a little town called Somerton. And I said, you know what, I don't want to disappoint them. And I was scared to death to tell them. And I thought, well, what am I going to do if they disown me? And now, look at it now, I said, well, first of all, they didn't pay my bills, and I had a job, and I took care of myself. But, that family piece is very strong. It's very strong to a lot of us. And I sold them short because they were nothing less than supportive. My dad said, well, you said there's nothing to worry about right now. Let me know when we need to worry. Let me know what we need to do. My mother's a little different. She'll bury her head in the sand and say, if we don't talk about it, then it doesn't exist and it'll go away. Not so much. But last year, it's a year ago today, I did a World AIDS Day presentation on the State House steps in Columbia. And as I was walking to the podium, it dawned on me that while I talk about HIV almost every day for work, I reveal my status to groups of people, to groups of patients at different clinics around the country. I've never stood on the steps of the State House. I've never stood on the sidewalk and just blurted it out there that I'm living with HIV and take it as it comes. Somebody recorded it and posted it on Facebook, and several people shared it, and my sister shared it, and it had about 1,000 views. And y'all, most of my posts on Facebook, I don't do political things. Most of it's what I'm eating for dinner or what my dogs are doing. You know, and I don't get into, I enjoy looking at Facebook, but I just do not hear about people's political stuff on Facebook. But the responses we got there, the responses I got were all very supportive. And what I realized is that most people, or a lot of people, don't know that they know somebody living with HIV. And they've not had the opportunity to reach out, to be supportive, or to show their love to somebody living with HIV. And there was a name on that list of people that I remember seeing, of people that sent supportive comments, Sherry Cogdell. And I had no idea Sherry was here in Florence at HopeHealth. She's married to somebody. I grew up with Sherry. I grew up knowing her in high school. She's a couple years behind me. I think her husband was either in my class. I think, Kenny was in my class. And I looked at that, and Sherry sent a very supportive remark, and that stood out to me, honestly. I'm saying this. But it also said, oh my God, here it goes in Somerton again. Everybody's going to know again. And you know what? I tend to think the worst from a little small town, because they live in a little protected cocoon of people who think just like them. And I need to forgive Sherry for expecting that I wasn't going to get support from down there. But I really appreciate that. You know, those comments mean the world. And it also showed me that vulnerability can be a measure of courage, and it allowed me to be open and giving, and to be supportive or loving, and let people know they can be supportive or loving. And people can't do that unless we tell them. You know, love removes those barriers. Giving and receiving love allows each of us to be the best we can be. And to say that and also it allows us to say that I'm enough. You know, when Sherry wrote me this summer and asked me, I was between jobs. I didn't have a job. I didn't know what I was going to be doing. Jansen had told me last year about this time that my job was going to be ending, and I had not found another one yet. But she asked me to do this, and I thought, you know, isn't there somebody taller or with a better voice or a better speaker or somebody like that can come do this? But you know what? With love, it just allows me to realize that I'm enough. You know, I'm enough to do this, and that I don't need to be more. I can always learn more, and I can always learn to do things better, but we're all enough. We're what God made us to be. And so, you know, love allows me to say again that I'm an HIV survivor and not an HIV victim. You know, and the third gift, thank you. The third gift that we can give ourselves today, you know, and in keeping with the program, Johnny almost stole my show when she did the peace, love, and hope thing earlier. But the third gift we can give ourselves is the gift of hope. And you know what? I started thinking about it, and y'all, I thought about this talk. I spend a lot of time driving, and I work in North and South Carolina, Virginia, and I spend a lot of time in the car and listen to podcasts. And I started thinking, I said, what is hope? You know, what is hope? You know, and it's kind of like sometimes I think about what is prayer, and I've learned for me, prayer is, and somebody said, well, prayer is just begging, isn't it? I said, no. To me, prayer is a conversation I'm having with God. So that is what I see as prayer. Everybody can have their own definitions of things. So I had to think about it. So what exactly is hope? Is hope just a wish out there? But hope is an expectation and desire for a certain thing to happen. And hope also embodies a sense of trust and faith that thing will happen. You know, in 1984, when I was diagnosed with HIV, there wasn't a whole lot to hope for. We could hope we didn't get sick, and we could hope that medical research would happen fast. And you know, I remember my doctor telling me one time along the way, he said, you need to live long enough for the next new medicine to come out. You know, earlier in the day, we did them one at a time. Y'all, medication wasn't available in 1984. There really wasn't anything. And my doctor called me and said, I remember calling me at 6 o'clock one morning and said, I need you to go to Duke University. Y'all know how far that is? It is 4 hours away from here. 4 hours away from Columbia. It's a little bit closer from Florence, because you can get on that 95 and hop up there. But that was the closest place I could go to get the first HIV treatment. Y'all know what that first HIV treatment was?
AZT.
I'm looking around there, most of you weren't even born then, but AZT was the first one, and it wasn't available here in South Carolina. So I had to go there, and I did, and I had to go there every 2 weeks. And you think about how much better it is now, and I had to take the medicine 5 times a day. So, and it was every 4 hours, but I was allowed to sleep through the night. Some people had to take it 6 times a day, and they had to wake up in the night to take it, because we didn't know how much we were supposed to be taking. And now I take 2 pills at night and go to bed to treat my HIV. And I see my doctors twice a year. So it's incredible that I was doing that every 2 weeks, and then it was every month for a while. And then, we got an 8-out program here. We got programs like HopeHealth going, and so people don't have to drive 4 hours to get medication. But the sad thing is here too, is there are people who can't get to doctors from half an hour away. Transportation is one of the biggest hurdles to people getting HIV treatment. And you guys do a great job here. You've got satellite clinics, places, but that is something I hear over and over, all over the South when I talk. This transportation is huge. But, I think back, and I think I did confuse hope with wishing sometimes. And so, and as I was getting ready for this talk, I read a little devotional every morning, and there was a priest from my church that's moved on now, and he posts something every now and then. And it's amazing how things fall into place for us sometimes if we'll open our eyes and look for them. And so I was reading a message from one of my favorite priests, and this was just yesterday, the day before yesterday. And he said, wishing is very different from hoping. When we hope, we believe and trust that God, in whatever way we see Him, has a plan for us and those we love. And hoping, unlike wishing, is trusting that our prayers and desires will be fulfilled according to God's purposes, which may be very different from what we expect or what we wish for. So that's what distinguishes hope from a wish. In many ways, the messages from World AIDS Day 30 years ago are still close to the same. We continue to seek strength and understanding, and we seek better treatment for people living with HIV. We're still challenged with increasing awareness. We're still challenged with increasing awareness and prevention for HIV. But we all have a part to play in ending this epidemic. And, again, with hope, I'm able to say that I'm an HIV survivor and not an HIV victim. I'm about to finish, y'all. One of our biggest hurdles in HIV is addressing stigma. And stigma can't exist in a world of peace, love, and hope. You see, we're in the best place we could possibly be right now, short of a cure. And I was talking with Sally a minute ago, and I talked with several people, and I work in the pharmaceutical industry, and I kind of know how the process goes. And if somebody discovered a cure today, it might be 8 or 10 years coming to market. We don't have that cure right now. But what we do have is we have effective treatments. There are just over 100 million. There are just over 1 million people in this country living with HIV. I think it's like 1.1 million people, and we believe about 19% of those people don't know it. It used to be a third, so we're getting better. It used to be 30% didn't know it, so we're down to less than 20% of people don't know it. So we need to help people understand the importance of testing and knowing their HIV status. That knowledge is power. And that, getting on treatment is prevention. And treatment is so easy now versus how it was years ago. I said, like I told you, 3 pills 5 times a day versus 2 pills once a day, pop them down and forget about it. People on HIV treatment can achieve undetectable viral loads. That means their virus can't be seen in the test we have right now. And CDC published information last year saying that undetectable equal untransmittable. Someone living with HIV who has undetectable viral load is 99% sure cannot transmit that virus. So, and then we have PrEP. People who are at risk for contracting HIV can start a pre-exposure prophylaxis, a PrEP program. We have post-exposure prophylaxis, people who are accidentally exposed to HIV. So we have the tools. We can do this. We can eradicate this. I was in Rotary years ago, And I don't know how familiar you are with Rotary, but their big thing is eradicating polio in the world. Millions of people. And it's very different. It's apples and oranges looking at polio versus HIV. But they've been able to distribute vaccines so that polio very rarely occurs. There's still some pockets in the world, but they've all but eradicated a devastating disease as bad as polio in the whole wide world. So to think that we can't get to the point where we have these million people living with HIV on treatment and undetectable is a conceivable and valuable thing we can do. But it takes all of us. And we all have a part to play. And we can all do it. And it just simply takes, what? Peace, love, and hope. That's my message for you today. To spread that word, love yourselves, and keep hoping. Keep hope alive. That was a political thing, so I want to thank y'all for letting me come and talk. And I'm looking forward to walking with you just a little bit. Thanks y'all. Have a good one. And Amber's going to come back and sing. I'm glad I didn't have to follow